14 years ago, that's in 2003, former President Olusegun Obasanjo established the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, which is called the EFCC.
Now, its very first chairman was Nuhu Ribadu. His name quickly became a household name due to the zeal with which he fought corruption and made prominent individuals who before then seemed untouchable to face justice.
And since then, the EFCC became Nigeria's foremost anti-corruption agency. In November 2015, Ibrahim Magu was appointed the acting chairman of the EFCC. Now, being one of the agency's top officials to work with pioneer chairman Nuhu Ribadu, Magu also had a hardline stance to fighting corruption.
Now, 2 years after Magu's appointment, or well, I don't know what you would really want to call it. We will be x-raying the achievement of the EFCC under his leadership, as well as the drama that have played out. Now, here's an outline of some looted funds the EFCC has recovered in 2 years, as published by the Commission. Now, between May 2015 and October 2017, the EFCC recovered loots totaling May 2015 and October 2017, the EFCC recovered loots totaling 739 billion naira. Between January and August 2017, the EFCC has recovered loots totaling 430 billion naira.
Yeah, and 90 billion naira, Desiani loot, 13 billion naira, Ikoyi loot. These are all some of the things. And on convictions, Magu revealed that the EFCC has secured more than 140 convictions.
All right, these convictions enough to really prove that the EFCC has been living up to expectation, or has it dropped the ball? Well, we have a lawyer, Ahmed Abbas, in the studio with us to discuss this. Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
All right. In April of this year, Ibrahim Magu said the fight against corruption will continue whether anybody likes it or not, as it is the only way to guarantee Nigeria's survival, more or less. That's what he said. You know, it will be a guarantee of succor to Nigerians. So far, under Magu, because that is what we're looking at this morning, do you think he's lived up to these words?
Well, I would say within the context of the limitations and the environment that the man finds himself, I should say he's trying his possible best. He's trying his best.
Is it good enough?
Yes, he's trying his best because the environment is actually hostile.
Would like you to actually break that down.
Yes, the environment is hostile in the sense that you have a culture of corruption that it's like corruption has become a lifestyle. And when you try to act contrary, or you try to take actions, it's like the entire society, the system, the institutions reacts and deliberately puts hurdle in the war against corruption. So when you are fighting institutional conspiracy, it's really very, very challenging. When you have institutions that should assist you to achieve set objectives in the interest of the nation, and those same institutions are putting bottlenecks, roadblocks, brick walls, mountains, Jericho walls, then it requires much energy, it will require dexterity, it will require passion, it will require creativity, it will require mobilization of the entire populace to take ownership of this war before you can actually succeed.
Okay. When Buhari came in fact, nobody doubted that corruption would have been knocked off, dealt a very serious blow where we'll return to Nigeria of discipline, objectivity, straightforwardness, and all of that. And we saw the EFCC, as far as an instrument of the law, will be that vehicle or that instrument by which Buhari would have fought corruption. But the way it is now, Nigerians, even though you said they have done relatively well, considering the terrain, but Nigerians, knowing that Buhari, knowing Buhari's stance against corruption, expected so much more than what is going on right now. Would you say that EFCC had or was given the free hand to really work the way they were supposed to work?
See, from the president and the vice president, you do not need anybody to tell you that these are people of integrity who meant well for this nation. If you ask me the challenge, you can't take away performance from the person, the individuals involved. I'm not seeing passion on the part of Magu.
Okay.
I will tell you, I'm not seeing passion. I mean, put him side by side with Nuhu Ribadu. You could see
the difference.
There's a passion.
Clear. Okay.
So what Magu lacks is I don't see passion in him at all. There's no passion. Because if you back will with passion, you will succeed. Because you will leap over every wall. You will be creative. Because yours is to go, and there is no problem that doesn't have a solution. Look at Nuhu Ribadu. He had to solicit international partnership, constantly exposing his men to international training. They were collaborating with it because, look, corruption and financial crime is an international...
It's a network.
It's a network. You can't steal money and start it in Nigeria. You start it abroad. So you will need the collaboration and assistance of sister agencies, I mean, international agencies, security agencies, the FBI, the CIA, to be able to track these guys down. So if you lack passion, you won't go the whole log to achieve your set objective. What I'm saying in Magu
I'm trying
is
to
that
decipher what you mean, you know,
Yeah.
when you say that Magu lacks passion. In what way has it demonstrated the lack of passion? I mean, I know that he's been criticized as someone who just waits for the so-called body language of his principal, being the president, and all of that. But exactly what do you mean? We need you to put this on the table for us.
I do not think, with my little knowledge of the president and the vice president, that they are handicapping Magu in whatever form.
But some will tell you, look, the buck stops on their table.
I do not.
If they are passionate enough to really bring corruption to its knees, then it should reflect in the quality of manpower that they actually deploy to fight it for them.
See, I won't put the buck
at
the table of the president. Then you, Magu, if the body language of the president is telling you contrary to what you are set up to do, then you should have the courage to throw in the towel. Don't give me that crap. You are either incompetent or you lack the capacity to do what you are called to do. Look, the times and the season require men to pay courageous sacrifice.
So are you in support of the Senate, the National Assembly? They have actually refused to confirm him?
No, I do not. The issue of the confirmation of the Senate is a different ball game entirely.
Okay.
The reason and the objective or the motive behind their non-confirmation is a different ball game entirely. It's in their own self-interest, not in the interest of the nation. It's not about the efficiency or the competence. It's not about the competence of Magu that is at stake there. It's about survival. It's about defending our estate. It's about ensuring we do not go to jail or we'll be setting a dangerous precedent for the big boys going to prison. That's the issue at stake about their his non-confirmation by the Senate. It's not about whether Magu is competent or not competent. All I'm saying is that Magu should inject some life and some passion into his assignment.
Okay, but in this case, when you say life and passion, because everyone is going to act within the limits of your abilities or skill, as the case may be. You mentioned Nuhu Ribadu earlier on, who goes across the entire length and breadth of the world, networking, collaborating, sending his people. And even at that time, Magu was part of the squad of the system that time, so he also understood the workings that time. It was said he was available. So now that he has the mantle, his approach is quite different. Would you say he doesn't have the skill?
Very simple. Institutions and organizations must have succession plan.
Okay.
when you disrupt the succession plan of any organization, you run into problem. So when you employ competent people, Obasanjo, you may like him, you may not like him. He surrounded himself with people that he knew were passionate, were technocrats, they were competent. You can't take it away from Nuhu Ribadu. That guy was passionate about nailing corruption. He paid the price. He demonstrated it. He arrested his immediate boss, Tafa Balogun.
Yeah.
That is, he was ready to do anything in the war and crusade against corruption.
Within the confines of the law?
Yes, to a large extent. Now, when you allow such passionate people to run an institution and finish his tenure, you take him into confidence in the election, the succession plan. Even though the president elects the EFCC boss, you should be able to ask your outgoing EFCC chairman that you knew was passionate about his job to say, excuse me, who among your subordinates
do you think can keep up the legacy?
That's it. So over a long period of time, when you allow competent, outgoing CEOs and chairmen of EFCC to have a contribution, because they know those that have the culture, they know those that are passionate, they know those who are asset, they know those who are liability. If you allow it over a long period of time, you discover that the institution will automatically throw up competent, passionate leaders that will do the job. That's how you build a strong institution. But in the middle of a passionate man running an institution, you almost assassinated him. The Yaradua regime went after Ribadu. So the next person coming will just say, look, I need to be very careful so that I don't end up dying in the process of trying to fight corruption. So along the line, they whittle down the passion. You don't build strong institutions by disrupting the succession plan, because people grow in the system.
All right, but of course, after Nuhu Ribadu came was it Lamode and Farida Waziri and and of course Magu. We'll of course try to do a flashback on how this history has impacted on Magu. How independent? Because the word independence is used in, at least the imagery of the independence is conjured when you talk about the EFCC. How independent do you think the EFCC is? Against the backdrop of what you said earlier, how beholden or otherwise do you think Magu, the acting chairman of the EFCC now, is to his employer?
For me, I've not seen anything in the operation of EFCC so far that would make me come to the conclusion that EFCC is caged or handicapped in whatever way.
Okay.
I have not seen anything. And with great sense of responsibility, like I said, the president and the vice president, I think the antecedent has demonstrated to a large extent they mean well for this country. They may not have solution to all the country's problem, but I know in terms of giving free hand to the institutions under them.
He has it sufficiently?
Yes, he has it sufficiently. I have not seen anything to the contrary.
All right, we've seen about 140 convictions so far, and if you look at the list of all of these convictions, about 90% of them are either middle profile or low profile convictions, from the ones, at least comparative to the ones Nigerians really look, the ones that really make headlines. Now, the big ones, the real big ones, the high profile, very high profile cases involving politicians and all of that, to a great extent, we've seen where some of them hire lots of senior advocates of Nigeria. We've seen a lot of injunctions, interlocutory injunction, whatever.
And all kinds of injunctions.
In this instance, will it be right to say that the judiciary has really not helped in the fight against corruption, especially at the high profile level?
Most of the institutions, I would say, without apology, are conspirators in the huge game of corruption. Even there are senior members of the legal profession where I come from that are also beneficiaries of this system, because we're told money is not just the main motivating factor in the practice of law. Sometimes we should exert some measure of moral influence on what transpires in the society. But most times, you discover that the practice is highest bidder, bring the money. Because sometimes you need to ask yourself, why will you occupy an office for which your entire emolument, if for 4 years, does not amount more than 50 million naira or 100 million naira, and you are found having embezzled, or you have an allegation over your head, over your neck, that you have embezzled the sum of 5 billion or 10 billion, and now you employ the services of a legal practitioner that you pay almost about 250 million naira to defend you in an office that ordinarily your salary will not be more than 50 million naira for the entire time. It's a matter of conscience.
So the war against corruption is a really complicated one.
It's a complicated one. It's a complicated one. You know, from the politicians themselves, like Mahatma Gandhi says, when you have politicians who do not have principle, you are in problem. When you have police officers and law enforcement officers, security agencies who do not know what it means to be security officers, who do not know the dignity and the honor of that office, who either compromise their investigation, because conviction starts from investigation. When they boggle their investigation, or they get bribe and look the other way around and do shoddy job, even the prosecution will be in problem.
Well,
second,
now that you mentioned, yes.
Thirdly, when you also have a segment of the legal profession who are ethically, you know, bankrupt, you are in trouble. And when you also have a judiciary that is also, I mean, at the behest of the highest bidder, you see this complex network of this thing, then the EFCC man or those in the forefront of fighting corruption, you know, they have an uphill task.
And these agencies that you just mentioned have been, you know, adjudged to be the most corrupt in the nation. Yes. The judiciary, the police.
Yes. No, you do not.
And so many others. But Magu is saying, look, in spite of the antics of some persons who want to, you know, stall or delay the process of fighting corruption, that the EFCC has done very well in the area of prosecution. But then the area of prosecution is where the judges who have thrown out many corruption cases have found to be the weakest link in the war against corruption. So how do you place this?
There are two sides of this issue. One, law is about substantive law, procedural law. Even when you have a forthright judge, he's not a Father Christmas. You can, even in your presence, someone might commit an offense, even you as a judge, and you're a living witness. Procedurally, there are laid down procedure on how you come to establish the commission of that offense. And he's not allowed under the law to use his own eyewitness account to determine the outcome of that case.
Right.
He has to be impartial. When the prosecution fails to follow laid down procedure in establishing the commission of that offense, the judge will simply rely on the evidence adduced before him to come to a conclusion, even if he's an eyewitness. He's not allowed by law to say, look, I'm convicting you despite the failure of the prosecution because I was there.
This is why they say the law is an ass, yes.
So even if you have a forthright judge and you are unable to do, I mean, a thorough job of your own presentation, your case falls on the altar of technicality. You also have judges, sometimes, who give judgments that are neither here nor there, that you will know somehow have been negatively influenced.
Okay.
Because if you have a forthright judge, I tell people sometimes, the executive, we call them Your Excellencies. To the legislature, we call them honorables. But the judges are the only one we address as my lord, because they are gods. And some of them are not exercising their lordship in their courts. That's why even some legal practitioners turn the judiciary or the courtroom into a Nollywood center. Because if some of the lawyers are taught lesson, that this is a court of justice and not a court of frivolity, Because most times, we know what happens in the courtroom. That you will know that. Why? See, if I have a client that is innocent, I will be more eager to quickly dispense with the case by establishing his innocence.
So performance of the EFCC, what you're saying is
complicating issues.
And
because how many more times you appear in court?
When you see a legal practitioner deliberately clogging the wheel of criminal justice system, delaying the trial of his client for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, you do
know
not
that
need anybody to say you are trying to hide something. If your client were to be innocent, you should be the one saying, I want this
justice
matter
now, done and dispensed with.
Let us try, expeditiously dispense with this matter so that my client can go back to a life of normalcy.
Okay. Well, we don't have all the time right now, but let me ask you this before we go. A lot of Nigerians are saying some billions, from the reports we got, lots of billions have been recovered from some of this fight against corruption. Instead of sending the money back to the consolidated, account of the government, Nigerians are saying, tie that money to one of the projects. So we know, okay, when you recover this money, you went to the second Niger bridge, or when you brought that money, you went to the construction of an airport or something. So that
because the EFCC is saying that it has so far, $2 billion in its coffers. At least that is what it has. Recovered so
far.
The anti-corruption
law. $2
billion is almost half of the $5.5 billion that the government
needs for some of these projects. What do you think?
That's the right thing to do, and I think I read it from somewhere.
Or it's not as simple as it seems.
Finance the 2018 budget from some of the recovered loans, because I think that's the most, intelligent thing to do, because the problem has always been in the time past we recover loot and we do not know what happens to it. So I am also of the opinion that part of that money should be used in helping to finance our infrastructure deficits.
Okay. Well, we have to leave you here right now. Ahmed Abbas, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.